today is an interesting talk because it's sort of like life gets harder before it gets better. And I'm not trying to sound pessimistic. I'm trying to explain a spiritual principle that folks have been saying, wow, I mean, I'm waking up, I'm growing spiritually. Why is anything at all going on in my life that's a challenge? It really could basically and best be explained the way life itself is. For example, because everything, as above, so below, and as within, so without. There's metaphor of life, there's connection and reflection of life from the inside to the outside and vice versa. So when we look at a near-death experience, for example, people say, wow, I saw the most beautiful, blissful things, whether it was a feeling of happiness or whether it was lights and so on, loved ones or whatever. Notice that when they first pass over, almost always, there's a quite pleasant experience. And then people just assume that's all there is on the other side, which isn't actually so. Just like on earth, when we grow spiritually, there's those immediate moments of, wow, I'm sobering up and I feel clear-headed, or I started meditating and I feel a little more calm, trusting of life, or whatever. I worked on some issues and I feel, catharsis. Catharsis kind of the old just feels decompressed and I feel a little more clear and centered. That's just like going to the other side. It's after a death, there's often this nice, quiet, centering moment. And a lot of people then just assume, of course, it's from wishful thinking, that that's the way it's going to remain. Well, it doesn't remain like that. Even like in A Course in Miracles, the teacher's manual, it talks about when you grow and you really commit to the spiritual path, first of all, good for you. But there will be an undoing period where the things you knew start fading away. You certainly might have that initial, wow, this feels good, a better life or less stress of the past, but it doesn't stay that way. So we have our initial kind of a nice feeling, but then comes the settling in and sort of adapting to the changes and the losses. It's not really supposed to be looked at as losses of things that should destroy you, emotionally, having lost things. It's more like some changes. That which was familiar has kind of gone away and a new life is kind of filtering in and so on. So I'm saying that when you have a near-death experience, it starts off kind of nice. What you don't know is what comes after that. I'm not saying bad things happen, but you're now there. So when you first get there, it's like, welcome, come on in, this is great. Just, see your loved ones and higher vibration frequencies, peace, happiness, everything's kind of sweet. But when you actually are there and you stay for a while, like indefinitely, meaning just when you stay because you've passed over for sure, and you're not just coming right back. See, they don't want to bum anybody out. They're going to just let you see the nice stuff and then go back and report it. They don't tell you, well, then after that, a minute and a half or a year and a half or a day and a half or whatever it is of that, okay, we got to sit down and look at your files, see how you did. Let's see. Looks like you worked on this relationship, but not that one. Okay, we'll just note that. And and looks like you did this pretty well. Good job. They go over your files. It's really your Akashic records, and they go through that to see how you did and what you might still need to work on. So after you've experienced that for a period of time, so there's like the immediate bliss, just like immediate positives that come from, say, getting on the path. Then the work comes in, and that's where a lot of you are at right now, saying, I took Michael's Congregating a New Life class, or I'm reading A Course in Miracles starting here in January. You start a new year, maybe it's a good time to start the course, or whatever it is, my online courses or whatever you study. And wow, it was so inspiring and it's exciting. But then, not for everybody, but for some, for many, there's still this like, wow, stuff comes up, processing, deeper issues. So when we start off on the other side or here on the path, it is pretty nice because you're getting kind of a taste of a better life. But it isn't. There's nothing wrong with the fact that it will turn on you. You know, it will have to reveal at some point that there's more. And so those of you who are on earth right now and going through this and saying, it just feels like things are challenging right now. Let me just check my astrological reports. You know, what did the newspaper say today? Is it a full moon? No. Mercury retrograde? No. You know, you're looking to try to find the reasons, rhyme and reason. And sometimes there isn't going to be a tangible rhyme and reason. Instead, it's going to just be your spiritual path. And that path might start off an initial like, wow, cool, but then it'll go into work. It goes into, oh God, you know, I was happy to know that I have a new life, but I forgot that I'm going to have to spend some time saying goodbye to the old life, which can come through burning bowl ceremonies, screaming, crying, counseling, you know, therapy, body work. Who knows? It's going to vary per person, but there'll be some you could call it painful stuff. It's only painful because of our resistance to releasing and our insistence to have a certain thing like control. But it just, you know, it's going to pass away. This too shall pass. So the painful experience will pass. And then comes the really great stuff. Forever. No, because there's cycles within cycles. You know, you could do work on relationships and have that initial, for example, let's say you're in a challenging relationship and you want to, you know, do something about that. You want to change that. So good for you. You make a change and then you meet somebody right away on the rebound. That's that initial going to heaven. Wow, this is all really great. But before you know it, that relationship also starts having challenges. It's kind of like that. Life is kind of like that. The ego has no intention, the human ego, it has no intention of saying, well, now that you're reading the Course in Miracles, I'm just going to pack up and leave. It doesn't work like that. The ego, which is like the psychological equivalent of religious versions of evil. So the ego or evil, it has no intention of giving up just because you decided to get on the path. You know, instead it looks at you and says, you never stick to anything anyway, so I'm just going to beat you up and you're going to give up on this so-called spiritual tangent you're on. You know, it doesn't think you're going to be authentic with it. The more you show your tenacity, you know, you're going to be like hanging in, you know, with your path. It's going to start going, I don't like you, you know, I don't like you very much. And what's worse is you're being an example to other people how to endure being alone instead of desperate, you know, and needing relationships. You're starting to show people how you can handle sometimes being ill and still be okay. You know, it doesn't really appreciate that very much. You know, so the religious standpoint would be that you are essentially in battle with the devil. You know, in psychology or in mythology, people that study mythology as a sort of an archetype of life, you know, they're going to look at it and see it more like you're battling yourself, your own lower nature, you know, and there's ways to get through that, you know. But why does my life seem to be going through challenges? Shouldn't it be getting better? Yes, guys, it is getting better, but the challenges still are a drag. I mean, they're, you know, you're changing your life, you're getting on the path, you spent some money to take a workshop, you're whatever, you know, change your wardrobe, your house, you feng shuied, you rebirthed, you breath worked, you know, did burning bowl, you stood on your head and did pranayama breathing, and, you know, all these fancy things. You took up yoga, you know, you got yourself, you know, your special yoga outfit, you know, and bought your mat, you know, to do the work on. You did all these key things, you know, you bought fairies to hang in your house or whatever, you know, and still, you can't keep your ex from bothering you, calling you, nagging at you, or you still can't make your children behave differently or whatever it happens to be, or you just right here in yourself, still have addictions or still have anger that you can't get past, or just things you thought were gone. Why would they be coming up again? I mean, seriously, I thought I was way beyond that. And here it's coming up. Is that the best I'm going to get out of this workshop I took? I could have not taken the workshop and just been better off because I didn't have the person calling as much. That's how the ego wants you to see it. But instead, Yeah, you did. You awakened a dragon, but it will not drag on, that dragon. It will not drag on. It's just rearing its head because it's doing the little screaming, I'm melting, as it fades away. It's all it's doing. And if you weren't watching the movie, say Wizard of Oz, and you just heard the scene, right starting right then, I'm melting, that the screaming, the fear in everybody's faces when they're watching that happen, that gathered around in that moment in the Wizard of Oz. I don't think I've ever even seen the whole movie, but that's just, I understand some of the clips from it. Um, so when you're checking that out and you're hearing that, yeah, it doesn't feel very good, like a vibe. It doesn't feel very good. But when you really are able to know the movie, know the scene, know what's really happening, then you're kind of going to be more confident. It's no big deal. She melts because she was evil and she disappears. She just melts. She disappears. She's not actually going to be tortured. She just disappears. And then, good things come to everybody. But notice that in that story, how Dorothy has to go on all these initiations, to find a heart, to find a brain, a mind, and so forth. That's like us. We get on the path, and at the end of the path, we realize we had it all along. We did. We really did. We had God all along. God is with us everywhere we go. And you say, well, wait a minute. That kind of sounds like then God is when we start wars. God is when I'm abused or cause abuse. No, God is with me wherever I go. It doesn't mean God's doing those things. I'm doing, God is being quiet, centered way deep down inside, somewhat, for the most part, invisible to me who's being hurtful or is being hurt. Centered in here, just saying, I love you, come home, it's okay. I love you, I love you. And we're juggling to hurt or be hurt. We're trying to deal with this world. And doing our best. But remember, you're on the right path. You're on the only path. The one that has to do with waking up, remembering who we really are and what God really has in store for us in our day-to-day lives. So it's not going to always look pretty. But I know right now a lot of folks are going through a lot. I mean, literally and figuratively, we're globally going through a dark night of the soul. Round and round that goes. Where it stops, nobody knows. How long it'll last, you can't really predict it. You can generally say, dark night soul, that usually is a few years long. Could be several years even, 7 or so. But once you get launched into the dark night, it usually is going to last a few years. And, we could say we always have some amount of political struggle or economical struggle or war or things on planet Earth. That's true. But you can tell when the dark night hits because it's a different vibe to it. It's like the Depression, the Great Depression many years ago. That was one that was a little more undeniable. It was one that lasted longer, and it's one that hit almost everybody. So that is different from a recession that might have happened, I think, in the 70s or something. There's a difference. One, you're having a bad day, a bad weekend. One, you're having a hangover because you drank too much. That's not a dark night of the soul. The dark night of the soul really lasts longer, hits harder, hits more people. It's broader, deeper, etc. And the world is going through that right now. A lot of spiritual teachers are being tested and attacked and tested. Political figures. It's just people are just going nuts about every topic, just about. So it's not to be taken personally. It's not you. You're doing your work. If you're doing your work. If you're not doing your work, maybe things are falling apart in your perspective because you're not doing your work. So get on the path, get sober, get clean, get right, work on just staying in as much alignment as possible. But if you're on the path, great. The difference of not being on it is that being on the path helps you to be more conscious. So you're more responsible about decisions instead of going, I don't know why this is happening. It's a little more like, no, I do know. It's still a drag because I know why it's happening, but I'd like it to end a little sooner. You're going to have those human thoughts, but just hang in there. This too shall pass. Be prayerful. The thing is that, and a primary difference between not and being on the path and having stuff go on is that if I'm not on the path, consciously on the path, and stuff's going on, it won't matter. When it ends, it doesn't matter because I'm not on the path, and I'm just going to go around and around with these challenging issues anyway. Everything else is in control of me. I have no say-so. I'm just a victim of the world I see. And it just keeps going around and around like that. When you're on the path, even if you still ache at some of the challenging moments, you kind of have a different way of looking at it. So, sort of saying, but at least I have friends that are with me on this, spiritual friends that are supporting me on this. I can reach out and they can say, hey, I'm going to do some prayer with you. You also know how to do prayer and shift a day instead of just staying stuck every day after day after day after day. You know how to shift, and you go, wow, for half a day I felt much better. Even if it's just half a day, you know that you were able to shift it. When you're consciously on the path, you're able to know this is going to end, and when it does, you're like launching into co-creating a new life with God. You're not like, well, I'm just glad that's over. Then you're only happy that you're not in as much pain, and that's not the highest level of happiness you can have. So it's instead you're like, no, I'm going to now launch. Now that the dark night is fading, so my tires are not stuck in a rut, I'm ready to launch, and you just off into a new life. So you recover faster. You stay a little more sane during. So there are perks to staying sane, awake or conscious when you're on the path and going through a dark night of the soul. Of course, in Miracles does say things like, it's funny because there'll be a moment in the text that'll, right now you're along far enough in this course. You should know by now that that you're coming along, you're getting it, but some days you're still going to be doubting. And right about now, you probably are feeling maybe even a little more anxious than you used to be feeling, or depressed more than usual. And you're thinking, like, how did they know? Are they got a camera in here? It knows because it knows the level of consciousness with which it's shifting in you. It knows our consciousness and what changes it's making as it's doing it. It's not just a nice book. It's not just a neat read. This is a very, very God-inspired book. Every line in it is designed, not written, designed. And that design is part of God's plan for our awakening, the undoing process of the past, so that we can awaken to a new life. So it's very, very powerful. So just, check it out. Let that be part of your study if you don't, if you're open to that. And if you can't seem to get it, just try anyway. Just try and read it anyway. Try at least for 30 days to see if it starts to catch on. If it doesn't, it's not a problem. Switch to something that's more user, meaning user, friendly. Like Jesus Calling. I do both. It's cool, whatever you want to do. Jesus Calling is nice, spiritual, inspirational reads for every day, feeling like Christ is communing with you and so on. One day I might do a book like that, just sort of a 365 readings or blessings for each day or something. I might do that one day, but just find things that work for you, that inspire you, lift you up. But even A Course in Miracles is telling you, about now, instead of like, you're going to win the lottery tomorrow, it says things like, about now you're probably feeling anxious or depressed or whatever. And why is it saying that? That's not very uplifting. It is uplifting because it's reassuring you you're not going crazy, you're just waking up. If you're feeling anxious, it's because your ego is getting a little bit agitated at you, and it's going to get more and more ticked off that you're not succumbing to it so much. How and why? Well, you're reading a book that's reprogramming your mind. You're feeling, not just reading, you're also feeling a book. You're feeling a material that's changing your heart and soul. So you're awakening, and it's just wonderful. And, the world is going through a dark night of the soul, so plan accordingly. I mean, you'll save yourself some grief if you just kind of go, okay, wait, the world's going through a dark night, so let me just chill a little bit more instead of expecting the world to get it tomorrow. Politics, I'm going to turn on the news and everybody's going to be hugging, It's kind of a funny thing because when you think about the word Congress, all the Congress is getting to a congressional meeting because in some teachings in the Far East, especially in the Tantric Buddhism, the word Congress means to make love. So wouldn't it be funny if one day Congress, they were all making love or something. But in a sense, that's what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to congregate, congregate, gather together and become one mind, which is why in Tantra, Congress is two people becoming one. In Congress, it's supposed to be two parties or more parties joining as one to become sane. They're supposed to get together to say two or more are being gathered right now to receive your guidance, God. Tell us what you'd have us do. And then we'll do our best to stay aligned with that guidance and then deal with the paperwork. That's all. They're just supposed to we'll do the paperwork, but you guide us on what to do. You get an inspiration to buy a car and somebody still has to sign all the paperwork because that's one of the illusions of this world. They don't say, well, we'll just imagine God's stamp on it because that's not the way the world is allowing itself to be anymore. It was a little more like that in very, very ancient times. But, people seem to have separated and lost sight of how to do that. So in our lives, guys, that's what it partly means to keep the faith. Keeping the faith means this, despite things looking like they're falling apart, keeping the faith means I'm going to still know and affirm that despite feeling down, up is here, right here somewhere. Despite getting caught up in an ego, spirit is right here somewhere. Despite being angry, love is here somewhere. Faith means that's essentially believing in things unseen. It means I just can't see it right now, but I still know, not just believe, I know it's there. And that's really a really beautiful interpretation of what faith is. It's not supposed to be blind faith in something that might come through someday. Faith means despite what I seem to see or feel, despite what my senses tell me, I believe there's something else. I believe that right here, there's God. Right here, there's love. Right here, there's happiness. And all I need to do is do my work to get the other stuff out of the way so that I can then feel spirit come through. And all of a sudden, there's a shift, a little happier, a little more relaxed, a little more peaceful, which seems small because it's small because people don't know how to spot it. They're just so caught up in the stuff, they don't spot it. But when you see that little shift, did you have a shift like that seconds before that? No. Did you have it an hour before? 3 hours? No. I was pretty upset today. Now you felt a little shift. You must give credit where credit's due. That was a miracle. You had a shift where you weren't feeling one before. And if you did feel one, you probably wouldn't have taken time to even do your prayer to try to bring a shift. So something wonderful happened. You got to feel like a little drop of peace. It could have been more, but that's all you were open to right now. Now, are you okay with that? That it was just a 1% shift? Yeah, I could feel that 1%. Would you like 10%? Really? Can I? Yes, you can have 100%. The percentage of how much you want to feel the positives is up to you. So part of what I'm saying now is you and I, we're going through changes. We're upgrading to another level of consciousness. Globally, many of us are. But also as we started a new year, started new levels of teaching. We started my co-creation course, started A Course in Miracles, or whatever you're doing in your life to raise it to a new level. The darkness is going to try to match that. It's going to try to counter that, not even just match it. It's going to try to counter it and get you in a nosedive. So it's bringing up in each individual stuff. But then just in case you can survive that, because you know how to do it properly and responsibly, it's going to try to create enough of a darkness around you too, so that even when you say, okay, maybe today's not so bad, and you stretch out in the morning, yawn and open your eyes, the world's going to be dark enough to get you triggered if your own stuff doesn't get you triggered. So there's a whole game that this thing plays, the ego, and tries to set you off. And I'm not going to tell you, don't be sad, don't be angry. I'm not going to try to tell you there's no reason, because you feel the way you feel. It's okay. But do your work as best you can, knowing this too shall pass. And know that I can make a shift of 1%, 10%, or whatever. Is it possible that I can do more than 1% to 10, and from 10 to 50 and so on? Is any of this real? Is any of this possible? It really is. Then can I feel the effects sooner? If I did a prayer on a disease, could I actually see instantaneous miraculous shifts? You actually can. Why don't I? Because the time between the moment when I chose it and the time it finally appears, if this is a chronology moving this way, I chose it here, it doesn't appear to here. That's till here. That's because the ego is making us, it kind of controls our mind and our belief systems a lot. So it's figuring, technically, when I shifted, the miracle came along with it. It looks like this. But the ego puts a little jaws of life, boom, wedge in there, and then inflates it. Why? Because it's hoping that between the moment you asked for a miracle and experienced a miracle, it's fully hoping that that's now called time. That's all time is. It's an illusion. So it's saying, well, now that I've inflated the illusion of time between here and here, I'm hoping that you will completely fall apart in here somewhere, losing faith. That way, this will be canceled. So, because every thought, everything has a, cause has an effect. The word, cause, like the word curse, in a sense, comes from cause. And it means a curse. I'm cursing you. I'm causing you to believe something. I'm causing myself to believe something. I'm causing myself to believe I experienced a miracle. The ego gets in there, inflates this space, and causes or curses us to not have that miracle. Now, if we believe and buy into what it's just done, if I let my eyes determine my reality, if I let these senses, which are generally controlled by the ego, if I let them control me, determine my reality, this gets inflated. I look around with my senses. There's no miracle. I'm looking closely. There is none. That's not going to be good on my soul, is it? It's not going to be good because I tried, I prayed, took a new class, no miracle. Now I'm deflated. My deflated consciousness is going to bring effects. This guy here, the coming miracle, gone. And instead, these miracles are replaced with new effects that the new cause has brought. So a new cause or curse created a new effect, which is faithlessness or doubt, or how you feel when you've taken a class, you thought it was going to make a difference, and I took a prosperity class and the next day I went broke. How's that going to work? What person is strong enough to say, and I guess going broke was actually part of the ending of the old prosperity so that I can launch into a new level. Who's going to do that? What person, what group says, all right, let's get together, family unit, family meeting, let's all get together. Let's pray to change our lives. Let's pray for, only to find out the next day one of the partners launches into an affair. One of the kids has a terrible accident. How do you explain that to the family the day after that? Probably we shouldn't pray anymore because clearly God doesn't like us, I mean, you wouldn't be wrong to be tempted to think that or say that or feel that, honestly. I'm just, being honest, guys. It's a practical way you're going to feel as a human being. What I'm saying, however, is despite the way it looks, you can't concentrate on a shift and have anything go wrong per se. It would only be our consciousness that's already off. God doesn't bring you challenges. When people say that, I prayed for patience and God gave me tests of patience. God doesn't say, oh, I'm going to teach you a lesson today. God is only love. But it's us. It's us that allows that time lag for a miracle. It's us that allows, I should be able to create greater prosperity today, but I have some karma from another lifetime. God never once in history brought up somebody's past life in a way that would condemn them from having a new life. It's never happened from God. Only us, our soul and or our own ego, that will bring it up. Our soul will bring it up sometimes, because it thinks it's what it needs to grow. And so therefore it is. It's what we need to grow because that's what we believe. The ego, on the other hand, is like, oh, you want to bring up past lives? I'll show you a couple of those. And it downloads a bunch of dark stuff, And so we don't have to buy into all that, Instead, God, past, present, or future, you show me. Who am I really? And God never accesses the past to tell you who you are in the moment. It only tells you based on your absolute innocence and purity, like a newborn. You are pure. You're just sweet. And more than a human reborn baby. Far, far more than the human mind could ever comprehend. We are an absolute pure light. And we have forgotten that. We manufactured all other kinds of, stuff. So if you're out there living right now and you feel isolated in relationship, or you feel, we're holed up in snow or cold or dark. Some of the people living in the Northeast are talking about how dark sometimes the days have been. It's not an accident. You're representing a lot of our winter consciousness. Dark, cold, alone, abandoned, rejected, and so on. So it doesn't surprise that some of these kinds of feelings would come up. Don't just try to brush them off. Don't just light a candle and say, oh, good, the darkness is gone. Embrace it in the sense that if you're going through a challenging time, whether it's related to politics, whether it's the weather or family, take time to just sit with it and say, wow, if I wanted to process this darkness, this coldness, this loneliness, or whatever it is, so that I would never have to visit it again, not because I'm afraid of it, but if I wanted to really thoroughly clean this out so that I knew that I'm good to go into my new life, what is it I would need to look at? And then look at it. Just be brave. Look at it. Oh, there's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you'd be surprised. I mean, you could drop a shoe on your toe and go, ow, and that could carry with it lots of deep, old stuff. It's kind of amazing. I mean, just using that quick analogy, drop a shoe on a toe. It just reminded me of, I remember a person I knew who dropped something heavy at work or something, like a board or whatever, contractor, maybe they dropped a board and it hit a toe and really hurt. I mean, it really hurt a lot, maybe broke it, but hurt their toe badly. And I remember that person saying, I don't know, maybe at the time they were 40. I remember them saying, years from now, that toe is going to be cut off because I have diabetes and that's what's going to happen. Self-fulfilling prophecy. But in other words, whether it's they shouldn't have said that or they should, it's not the point. What I'm saying is, notice that it came back. That thing that they invested in, it came back. And that's often what happens. So I'm here talking to you about that, and I'm remembering this person not only hurting themselves really badly because they were in quite a bit of pain, but then affirming that they're doomed now. Just years from now, that's going to all get cut off, I bet. They're saying they weren't having symptoms of diabetes at the time, in their life, but they already predicted one day that's what's going to happen. And so it is. And so it did happen. But part of my point is I'm talking about it. I'm remembering that. And I'm not even the one it happened to. So it does happen that moments of today, conversations, moments of trigger of some kind, watching a movie, these things happen and they bring the past to us. The ego will use it to further put you in pain and make you afraid and further layer armor around yourself to try to protect yourself, or reactions, defenses, etc. Or Spirit's going to say, hey, since this came up, why don't we just use this as a moment to clear it? Then it won't haunt you anymore. Humans do not usually choose the latter of those two options, unfortunately, but the world is going through a dark night. It's not personal to you. The world is going through a dark night. If anything, you might want to think about contributing to everybody waking up a little sooner. And I don't mean complete global awakening yet, per se, because that'll happen sometime soon. But I don't mean the total like that. I'm just talking about in your own little way, your own life, your own people surrounding you, your closest friends or whatever it happens to be, people at work. Just for you, you're supposed to be rebounding and making a difference. And as we're starting to get towards a close, one of the pieces to this, remember, is, this is all a test. So you're not actually just going through darkness about your own process. You're also, believe it or not, being watched by everybody around you. You are. All of us are. Not just teachers. All of us. Everybody around us is, we're all watching each other going, well, we all are in this together, aren't we? Kind of separate. Are we going to be afraid today, or are we going to be trusting today? Are we going to be ascending or descending in consciousness? Are we awakening or going further into sleep? And everybody's watching each other. So when I speak like I do and teach, people are watching going, yes, and you don't realize, you're not just liking what I'm saying, if you happen to like what I'm saying, you're not just liking it, you're actually recognizing it as a voice of sanity, a waking up. A waking up. You're waking up. And you're recognizing that my voice is sort of like one of those, hey, honey, come on, it's time to wake up. Or you were having a bad dream. That's all I'm doing is a parental kind of a voice that we all need to be for each other. And we all have moments of struggle. But are we saying, hey, be quiet. You're moaning in your dreams, yelling at people, adding to the fear of their nightmares? Or are we trying to be a gentle voice? I would like to say, oh my gosh, that we're all just gentle voices. I would love to be able to say that, and we're not. We do blow it sometimes. I'd like to think that I'm always a gentle voice, and I know I'm not. I mean, it slips now and again, whatever that version of ouch might manifest as. It could be frustrations of a project, or it could be frustrations of a family crisis, or who knows what, health things that people have. And I know, and I watch and I hear folks talking about how much they're in pain and their health issues. I can kind of hear conversations as I meander about life. But it's this too shall pass, and we're asked simply, on pure and simple, guys. We're being asked, would you do me a favor? God is saying, you're all in the nightmare, but could some of you try as hard as possible to be a voice of sanity, a voice of reason, a voice of mommy or daddy saying, it's okay, honey, it was just a nightmare. When your friend is saying, oh, I can't live, they left me, they betrayed me. I'm not saying try to talk over them and try to look superior. You can even get in the trenches with them, and cry with them if that's what comes up. But to not forget, they're listening. Can you say anything that would help reel them in a little bit? Like if they say, I hate him, just say, I don't blame you. Be in there with them. And then gradually, when the time is right, a little planting of a seed of forgiveness or a loving thought, or, this will pass, you'll see. Let's just agree that you and I are together, man. We're going to make a pact that we're not going to rush into relationships so quickly. How about it? Make a little light, playful a game of it in a sense. Something that would make sense to that person in the time, in the moment. Okay? And, those of you who know my work, that one of the things I talk about is the 5 stages of the soul level healing process, the 5 stages of the soul transformation process. And one thing I could tell you is if you're struggling, like with right now, like a little bit of darkness and so forth in your life, you're going through it's definitely one of the first 3 stages, because 4 and 5 is rebuilding a new life. So if you're going through a lot of darkness, you're not there, obviously. So let's take those out. You're going through one of these, and it's probably stage 3. Maybe a bit of the others, but stage 3. Because the first stage is when things are initially falling apart. A lot of you, it's not initial anymore. You're kind of in it, and then also you're seeing some light now and again, but it's staying dark. That's the interpretation I would have from most of what I'm hearing around from people. The initial stage, dismantling. The second stage, emptiness. That's just I can't get out of bed. Depressed, sad, just totally in a state of shock. The third stage is where you start to say, okay, well, now where am I going to go? What's next? What should we be doing to get this, launched, to get something moving here? So it's kind of like you're coming around, but you're not totally ready to come around. So that's disorientation stage. And that's where a lot of people are. And the biggest mistake people can make in the disorientation stage is to underestimate it and to try to just force yourself into a new life, or guilt and shame yourself. Oh, I should have been over this, or I shouldn't be feeling this. I read a book and it should have made me spiritual, so I shouldn't be dealing with any human things. Well, just don't even bother with that. It's not going to do you any good to further shame yourself, or I should have, could have, whatever, So yes, so do your process for sure, but don't impose your timing on it. Like I read that book, it should all be fixed immediately. As soon as I saw the end, it should all be there, right? Don't impose your timing. Know that there's a buffer that we create all too often. It's not God, but there's a buffer. And if I notice a buffer, it's best for me to go, I recognize I must have allowed a buffer to be put in place. And I deny the effects of that buffer because I'm denying the effects of my choice to let that happen. Because I'm going to let go of my belief in time and call on the timelessness of a miracle. I'm going to call on the power of God to neutralize this, at least its effects on me. Even if time still has to click by for some reason, whatever the reason may be, even if time's going to click by, I am denying its effects on me. I'm ready for inspirations now. So even if I'm going to write a book and it's not time, it doesn't happen yet. There's a publisher, they're going to book it, they're going to do it, but they're delaying. It's going to be an extra month. Well, I deny that. Well, I'm not saying to do that. Sometimes it's like, okay, I'm going to have to accept it'll be an extra 30 days, but in that 30 days, I'm going to kick some butt, man. In that 30 days, I'm going to start getting my PR ready. In that 30 days, I'm going to start booking some interviews. Like, you can still do stuff which you wouldn't be able to do if you were living in the depression of the buffer, the tantrum of the buffer, it's not going the way I thought and then the timing I thought. So, we've got to just readjust, and just kind of hang in there. And sometimes, I have to say, sometimes that can be very dark. It could be like once or twice I've been through that, and just all I know is it felt like not just darkness, it felt like I was dead. It felt like I'm sitting here witnessing the world, but I almost had a feeling like if I went to lift a pencil up, I couldn't lift it because I'm not here. It's hard to explain, but so dead, so lifeless, because that's how dark it can get. You're probably at that point. Some people are going to start watching or listening to movies and music related to romantic loss because they're going to want to, bemoan how depressed they are. Other people, it'll just be other versions of just a dark mood, put on a little Pink Floyd. Hello, hello, can anyone hear me? So it's like you're feeling like you're in that. What am I, in a dark, am I in a Pink Floyd album, Dark Side of the Moon? What do you think the Dark Side of the Moon is? When I was a kid, there was a survey or something on the radio because that album had come out. So it was a buzz, and they, caller number 3, can you tell us, what does the dark night of the moon, dark side of the moon mean? People are like, well, it might mean this or that. And, and I called in. I'm not like a Pink Floyd fan or anything like that, but I thought, well, I don't understand why people don't know. So I was a kid and I called in, got it. And they're like, yeah, you go on tickets or whatever. It gave them to some friends. So it's like, what does the dark side of the moon mean? Well, the moon represents emotion, in cosmic symbology. Dark side of the moon is the cold, the dark. It's the dark night of the soul. It's the dark mood. It's the dark night of us. It's the dark side of emotion. And hence the woman bewailing pain in some of the songs, and us and them, and some of the songs that have to do with just reflecting, looking within, and so it's a very interesting album, and became the #1 selling album of all time for a long time. Or it was either the best selling, or it was the number of weeks that it was on the top 10 chart for the longest number of weeks, and it was on for years. I think it was really surreal. Why would it be? Is it because it's the best band ever? Is it because there's a big pop song? No, it didn't have a big pop song on it. The song Money was a little bit of a hit, but then how did it happen, guys? Because it appealed to the archetype of human consciousness. Just like George Lucas wrote a movie called Star Wars. He thought it was a failure. He finished the movie, was done, and he went off to Hawaii, was sitting on the beach thinking, okay, I probably should give up film now because this movie's going to just crash, and nobody's going to understand it. It's kind of corny to some people. So yeah, I probably should give up filmmaking. And he got a call and said, he was told, guess what? It blew open, it's #1, and he was shocked. But he was working off archetypes. He was reading Mythology by Joseph Campbell, and he was working off archetypes. When you work with archetypes, you're going to be more accurate. When you're singing songs that appeal to the human consciousness, that's an archetype, they're going to understand what you're saying. If you just sing your song, then only you'll understand it. Or paint your picture, you might be the only one to understand it. But the more you tap into the collective, sometimes it's dark collective. Van Gogh versus, some of the Burne Jones or pre-Raphaelite, beautiful angels and all that. And other guys are painting almost sometimes a darkness because that's where they're at. It's neither good nor bad, but it is an archetype of consciousness. So you're working with the archetype of the dark night. You're working with the dark side of the moon. You're working with the dark night of the soul. You're in it. Even if you're not doing so bad and you're doing pretty good, that's great. You're holding space for the rest of us that, hey, I did the co-creating class of Michael's. I'm watching Michael's videos. My life's turned around and it's 99% great. That's fine. You're not failing because you're not failing with the rest of us. you're doing great. You're holding space for us in the light, and some of us then are holding space for you in the dark, meaning we'll hold the archetype of the dark space and we'll process. If ever you're there, we will have already done some of your work for you. Then you're saying, those of us who are in the light side of things, it's like, hey, we're holding space for you. As soon as you're done processing, we'll make it easier for you to access this light because we're holding space in that light. So it doesn't matter which side you're on, or even if you're half and half. Wherever you are, there you are. So you'll just do your work in that space, but know that it's a conscious thing. Know that you're doing something that's an intelligent program. You're not just accidentally on this side, that side, or in the middle. It's all part of an ingenious plan for humanity's awakening. But wherever you are, and especially if you're in the dark side of the moon, the dark side of emotions, the dark night of the soul, do your work while you're there. Be as conscious as you can. Do your work. It's very important, because if you don't, you're going to get, called back to do that work. I mean, it doesn't just go away. You're going to be called back to it. So remember, you have the power to shift these things. Be healthy, be responsible, and work through your stuff if it's there. Doing tracking and other exercise to kind of look deeper inside. And counseling and cathartic work or whatever. And then be prepared, because this too shall pass, and you're going to come out and you're going to launch to a new life. And when you do, yes, party time, celebration. If I only do like 10% of my work when I'm in the dark night, my celebration when I reach the light at the end of the tunnel, it's just 10% of the light I could have had. So I've always been the kind to think, I'd rather not finish my periods of test thinking I only made it halfway, so now I only get halfway positivity. I only, this is partly what Jesus meant by the parable of talents or coins. It's funny that they use the word talents. So he's talking about once upon a time, I'm just going to majorly paraphrase this, but there's a wealthy man, and he gives to a few of his servants or friends some of his money to go and invest. Here's some money. You hold this for me. You hold this for me. You hold this for me. I'll be back in a bit. Splits, comes back. How did you do with your talents? One guy says, well, I was afraid of losing any of them, so I buried them. And, okay, one guy buried them out of fear, to protect them. Another guy says, I invested them. And here's what I got back for it. So each person in the story did something a little different. But the leader of the story, the main guy in the story, the wealthy man, he wasn't happy with the guy that said, I buried it, which sounds like it's a good idea. Like, one guy invested and lost some money. You're happier with him than the guy who buried it? It's because in this particular story, the moral of the story is fear doesn't do anything for you. You didn't even risk growing in any way. So even if you seemingly lost your money or investment, if you're that guy, you didn't really lose it, because the losing is the metaphor of the dark night of the soul. So in the dark night, you still learn something, right? Did you learn something? Yes. Then I'm going to give you more of my money now, so come and let's celebrate. You, the guy that buried it, get out of here. And it's like, wow, kind of a weird, harsh, tough love kind of a story. And it has many layers and many meanings. But, one of them is do something. Do something. Come to life. Do something, even in the dark night. Come on, invest in something and run the risk. I mean, try to come out. Try to breathe. Try to keep the faith. So if it wasn't already clear, I'm closing with this concept that Spirit's going to say, can you, I know you're suffering, but if all you do is suffer in the suffering and put on a sad face, then you're telling people, this world has power over me, which means, hey, everyone, this world has power over us. My pain has power. My finances have power. That's what you're affirming in your behavior. You're actually teaching that to this world. Like, use the metaphor of your children. They see you doing it. They see how you're acting. And I'm not saying shame yourself. I'm just saying sit with it and think about it. And I would rather do what Spirit's asking and Spirit's saying. I would like you to show them it does not matter, that it does not get you. You believe in a miracle. You believe in a consciousness. A shift is coming. Even if you don't see it, try and find it inside. I know it's there. Believe and you'll receive. Ask and believe and you will receive. It's not ask and receive. I don't know where some of these people got the idea to rip that quote up, and morph it the way they wanted to make it, But it's ask and believe. So ask for what you need, but also believe that it's a possibility. If you don't ask for so much, ask for less so that you can believe that it'll happen, and then it more likely will. If you ask for something you don't believe it's going to happen, it less likely will happen, and now you're going to have evidence of negatives again. It's just so weird, how this all works. But please remember, God's looking for somebody's teeth to smile, to say a smile in all the dark times. Because does anybody have any teeth to show? I'm doing all right. Can you show bright eyes despite, everybody else feeling down? Can you show that, you're in a room of people who can't move? Their legs, they're, paraplegic, quadriplegic, whatever it happens to be. But let's pretend, in this case, they just can't walk. And you be the one that says, wow, I heard that Qigong can be done just from a sitting position. Wow, I feel better already after doing, a couple dozen breaths of focused, concentrating, breaths with intention. Wow, I feel kind of a nice buzz, a chi energy. Somebody else in the room is going to be like, even the skeptics, they'll kind of wheel themselves off somewhere and test it out. You're being an example to somebody. Even when they look broken down, you'll be an example to somebody. Just like how many movies were made like that, little stories of faith and miracles, how Pollyanna lived amongst people that were skeptics, and some of them were skeptics and rude, but she wore them down basically with love and got them to realize, it was there all along, and I forgot. I lost that love. I lost that faith, and I feel bad that I did. But you really have shown us that through hard times, you're a great example. And I guess, I don't think I've ever seen the movie, but I know the story somewhat. And I think it's a great one on that particular theme. Alrighty? So power to you guys. Hold your center. Stay the course. Show faith even when things seem faithless. Do your best. Because it's a test, but also other people might sink or swim based on what they see you demonstrating. I know it sounds like responsibility, but we're all in this together. So if you choose not to be that faith for them today, it's okay. It might be me. And if not me, it'll be somebody else in the program or somebody else that they run into. But somebody's got to do it, please. That's all we're thinking in this world is, please, the light beings are like just calling, is anyone, calling all souls, is anyone going to step up and help us make a difference? So I hope it's you today. All right. Blessings to you. God bless your hearts and souls. And remember, keep focus on the light even in dark times, but also keep focus on the light when you're in the light times. Just light all the time as best you can. And when you struggle, call on us, all of us, and we'll be there sending you prayers. Okay? Peace be with all of you. We'll see you. Bye-bye.